Welcome to Professional Conversations. My name is William Cuskin. This is the third professional conversation, and today we have Nate Seidle joining us, founder of Sparkfun, and a 2000, I believe that Nate, you graduated in 2003, and you started Sparkfun when you were here as an undergraduate.
Yep, that's pretty close. Graduated in 2004 and started Sparkfun in 2003.
Excellent. So this is exciting. This is an alumnus coming back, someone who's done something entrepreneurial with their degree and moved ahead. So I'm really looking forward to this discussion. Before we get going fully, I just want to remind everyone that Professional Conversations is a development of the at-scale Masters of Science, the MSEE, and that program is run on Coursera, and it is largely a student-driven program in which the students engage with lessons and work their way through. Professional Conversations is the department's sense that it could provide a real way of students working together and talking things through. So to that end, we've developed these monthly discussions. It's a 30-minute presentation followed by questions and answers. We also post the discussion afterwards, and those are available on the website. I am so glad to see some steady professional conversationers with us. Robert White was our first speaker, and he has joined every one of them since then. So great to have Robert along with us. Caitlin Gordon, absolute stalwart member of our tribe. Caitlin, it's great to see you there. And I also want to call out Adam Sadoff and Abby Rose, who are members of the department and have really worked hard on the MSEE from the beginning. So, that said, next month on the 12th, we have Tim Stelzer joining us from National Electronics. He'll be doing a professional conversation. So I hope you can make that. With no further ado, I want to turn it over to Nate Seidle. Nate will talk a little bit about his past. I have to say that Nate has a great biography. He's given talks on business obesity, on entrepreneurial bootstrapping. He has a great picture on the bio website, which has elicited a lot of kind of fandom already. So with no further ado, let me turn it over to Nate, and we'll have a conversation and then come back and see where we get to. Go ahead, Nate.
Awesome. Thank you so much, William. Let's see. I am going to try to share presentation. Let's do that. Everybody see that okay? Excellent. Cool. I am not completely adept at running a Zoom presentation, but mostly I want to say, like, you guys, I would love to have a conversation with you folks. So if you have any kind of questions along the way, don't sit there, just raise your hand and let me know what you want to hear about, what kind of questions you have, and what you want to hear about Sparkfun. Just offhandedly, how many folks, and I can see only a couple video feeds, but how many folks have heard of Sparkfun before today? A few, 3, 4, 5. Okay, good. So Steve, this is going to be really interesting to you, because if you haven't heard of Sparkfun, it's going to be a little different. But Sparkfun Electronics is basically an e-commerce website where you can go and you can find development boards and sensors and actuators and switches and all this different stuff, and some of the things that set us apart from other kind of e-commerce stores that sell the same thing. We spend a tremendous amount of time on our tutorials and our documentation. We realize that engineers' time is very, very valuable. So if you have to spend an hour or two getting a little tiny $10 board working, that little tiny $10 board has cost you $100, $200. Time is very, very valuable, so we spend a lot of effort on documentation so that folks can get started quickly. So what does Sparkfun look like? This is our facility up on Highway 52 if you're familiar with Boulder, it's halfway between Boulder and Longmont. We built our own building. We've got about 110 employees, and currently it doesn't look anything like this because like 60% of the workforce is remote, but we still have manufacturing going on daily. I think we're close to 7 days a week with 2 shifts. So we're still manufacturing quite a bit during COVID times. But whenever it's not COVID, we got a lot of people and a lot of dogs. So please consider coming to visit Sparkfun in better times. We give a pretty good tour, and we love telling folks and showing folks what we do. So where does Sparkfun come from? That is me, third one from the left with the red hair. This was shortly after Halloween, a long, long time ago when I still had hair. And let's see, this is probably 2001, 2002. Sparkfun was started in a bedroom in 2002. Shortly after that, I graduated from CU with a electrical engineering degree, BS. I'm told most of you folks are master's or graduate students. And so you are far more educated than I ever was. I barely made it out of undergrad. And during my time there, I was a rower on the club team. I worked in the dorms as an RA. I actually dropped out of engineering school for a semester, much to the chagrin of my advisor, so that I could go work in the 2002 Winter Olympics. That was my quote unquote semester abroad, was in Salt Lake City, Utah. I highly encourage you to find time to do interesting things during your tenure. But if you're a graduate student and you've already got a career going, I totally get it. I'm currently 39 years old, so I'm still in my 30s, and I come from Oklahoma. I tell you all of this because I'm trying to paint the picture that I have no business running a business. I'm an electrical engineer through and through, and yet over the past 17 years, I've had to learn a lot of lessons pretty hard and fast about how to build cool stuff and sell it over the internet. So again, any kind of questions you have today, I'd love to share with you stuff I've learned along the way. If you find yourself in Boulder at 14th and Euclid, you'll find 994 14th Street. This is the house that I was living with 2 roommates on the top floor. There was about 15 people in this house. It was probably violated all sorts of zoning laws, but the window up there towards the corner was my bedroom window. And I started a website and started shipping little things out of that bedroom. The way that it all started was I was building things with electronics. So in this picture, we've got a microcontroller hooked up to an EEPROM. This is the little microcontroller. This is the little EEPROM. This device back here is a GPS receiver. In 2002, this is what a GPS logger looks like. So today you can whip this up with almost nothing. It's super cheap, super easy, ready to go. But in 2002, this is what you had to do to put it together. And furthermore, to get the code onto the microcontroller, you had to use something called a programmer. This programmer cost me, I think it was close to $200. And to go to college, I had to borrow student loans. I was on financial aid. I had student loans. I had no money to spend on my own hobbies. So to purchase a $200 programmer was a lot of money. So we have the programmer, I'm writing code, I'm having a ton of fun building this GPS logger. And I don't know if you can see like the bits of wire and the screw and all the things sort of hanging out. As I'm having a ton of fun and learning, just, midnight, 2 in the morning, this is where you have your greatest breakthroughs and where you learn the most. And things are going great until I accidentally set my programmer down on a bit of wire and a couple screws, and there was a small spark and some smoke, and I vaporized the programmer that I had that I could barely afford. So what do you do in 2002? You jump on the internet and you find the cheapest possible thing you can to replace it, and this is what it looked like. Olimex was this website that kept popping up, and they had this programmer, this really nice kind of looking programmer, but it was unbelievably cheap. It was like 35 bucks. And I said, well, okay, maybe, they look a bit dodgy and I'm not sure. And they've got these frames, and okay, fine. Let's just bite the bullet and see if I can get this programmer from Olimex so I can keep my addiction, my hobby alive. There's no add to cart button. Okay, so now there's a kind of a bad experience gotten worse. I now have to email them and say, hey, I want to buy your programmer. They email me back and they say, oh, no problem. Here's a form you need to fill out, and then you need to fax back your credit card number. So in 2002, this was the state of e-commerce for electronics. And oh, by the way, we're in Bulgaria. I don't know about you, but I'm not very comfortable. I don't even know how to send a fax to a foreign country, and I'm not very comfortable doing it clear text on a fax. So these folks in Bulgaria, I've since met with Svitan, the guy who owns Olamex. They're amazing. They do really, really good products, but the state of e-commerce for electronics in 2002 was dismal. They didn't have online checkout. You had to fax stuff. The shipping was slow and it was very expensive. So I said, you know what? Perhaps I can talk to Olamex and convince them to let me be a distributor for their boards. I'll buy a couple extra. I'll keep one for myself. I'll sell some to my friends in Colorado. It'll all work out. And so in 2003, it was 2002, back when there was a bookstores and Barnes and Noble, I went to the bookstore. How do you start a business? Right? You're an engineering student. How do you do that? I don't know. You go buy the book, Business Plans for, I literally bought the Business Plans for Dummies and I read it front to back. And they had a series of chapters in there where they talk about business plans, obviously, but also where to get your starting capital. And they etched out angel investors, venture capital, equipment loans, and government financing. And all this stuff is great, except that it's a tremendous amount of work and a tremendous amount of time. So everybody hears about venture capital. Everybody says, oh my God, tell me how much venture capital I've got. It's, in my opinion, a terrible idea. Venture capital is a great way for other folks to make money on you. It's not a great way to run a business. So I sort of had these options. I didn't know what I would do. It really was going to take too long. So instead, I looked in my pocket and I had one of those credit cards. I don't know if you remember, or maybe you had a different experience, but when I started college, I got all of these credit card applications. They love signing students up for credit cards. So I had my first credit card. I had a limit of $2,500 on my credit card. And so that's how I started Sparkfun, on credit card debt. I bought some inventory from Olamex in Bulgaria. I bought a shelf for my little bedroom. I bought some clear packaging tape, and I bought a piece of canvas. Okay, what is a piece of canvas? That's so I could take pictures of the boards. In 2002, this was unheard of. Everybody thought electronics were ugly. Everybody thought nobody wanted to see what the product looked like. But as engineers, we all know you absolutely want to see. You want to see the connectors. You want to see the back. You want to see really up close how that board works so that you can make sort of your purchasing decision. So got the canvas. 4 months later, I got some more spam from, I think it was Chase or Citibank or somebody who was going to give me a student loan for $4,000. I didn't need it for school. I needed it for Sparkfun. I needed the cash flow. So don't tell the federal government that I borrowed student loan money to help fund a business. But it just goes to show that there is no book. Business Plans for Dummies does not tell you how to start a business. Nobody can tell you how to start a business. Every business is a little different. A little further down the way, my family purchased 3 shares, quote unquote, at $250 a piece. Those are now worth, I don't know how much, but there's lots of different ways to fund a business. Family is a fine way to do it. But yeah, we were just totally cash strapped and crazy. But yeah, we don't have, to this day, we don't have any venture capital. We're privately held. I think I still own about 92% of the company, with our current CEO owning 4 or 5% and the employees owning 2 or 3%. So it's all there, but we own our own destiny. We have no one we have to answer to. If we want to go do something, we can do it. Venture capital gets very, very dicey. So this is what Sparkfun looked like about 10 months into it. I don't know if you can tell, but that's my bedroom, right? That's my bed. That's a phone. That's my computer. There's a tape gun, right? This is what it was. I turned on the Sparkfun website, and within about 7 hours, I had my first order. Now, I don't know if you noticed, but I spent my money on inventory, a shelf, tape. What did I forget? I got the order that came in. I looked around. I don't have a box. I need a box to put the stuff in. So if you ever find yourself, there are recycling bins behind the engineering school that I've fished boxes out of for 6 months. It's free, right? It's free cardboard. when you're starting your own business, you have to be creative about how you're going to fund things. So dumpster diving behind the engineering center in Boulder was how I pulled boxes for Sparkfun for 6 months. Let's see, the third order was from France. And I bring this up because when I started Sparkfun, I thought I was going to be shipping to, my friends in Boulder, maybe some people in Colorado. I had no idea that there was pent-up demand, especially internationally. Business Plans for Dummies didn't tell me how to ship packages to France. Does anyone know how to ship stuff internationally? It's gotten significantly easier. But the point is, with your own business, when something comes up, they paid you money, you get on Google and you figure it out. You learn very quickly. The fifth order was for quantity 3 of an item. When I first ordered all of the different boards that Olimex had, I wasn't sure what was going to sell and what wouldn't. So I only ordered 1 of everything. Well, that meant that as soon as that customer bought 3, I didn't have 3, I only had 1. So I had to email a customer, and now we have to start talking about back orders. And I got to let the customer know, I've got to back order you. And then I know that that product is a good seller. So instead of ordering 3, I'm going to go ahead and order 6. And now we're getting into inventory and learning very quickly how to handle inventory. We were PayPal for the first 3 months of operation. This is a big deal because today it's very easy to accept credit cards. Back in 2003, it was very difficult. So we accepted PayPal, it worked well, but then to accept credit cards, we needed something called a merchant account. So a merchant account in 2003, it's very weird. It was like $110 application. Send off my check. A couple days later, I get a FedEx envelope in the mail, and in the envelope is a disposable camera. What am I doing with a disposable camera? So I figure out the return address is the merchant account people. So I call them up and I say, hey, I give you $110 to open an account. You give me this why a disposable camera? And they say, well, we have a problem with fraud. We have a problem with companies that open up and sells 10,000, they charge 10,000 credit card numbers, and then 24 hours later, they're gone. So with that disposable camera, we need you to take a picture of your inventory, a picture of your shipping department, and a picture of the outside of your facility. I said, ma'am, I'm really sorry, but that's a picture of my bedroom, and a picture of the outside of my bedroom, right? Like, how, no, you really, like, this is what you want me to do? And they said, yeah, that's what we need. Oh, okay, fine. So with that disposable camera, I took this photo and a few others, and I got approved. I don't know how bad you had to be in 2003, but they got approved. Guess what happened? Overnight, when we started accepting credit cards, our order volume doubled. If you make it easy for people to spend money, they will. There was a lot of folks that said, PayPal, I don't know what that is. I'm not going to buy from Sparkfun. But as soon as you add MasterCard or Visa or American Express, they say, oh, cool, yeah, I'll pay with that. So the lesson was just be really sure that your kind of e-commerce experience, or you just make it really seamless and easy for folks to get what they need. And then even today, you hear me discussing us, or we applied for a merchant account. It was just me in a bedroom. That was it. There were no employees. There were no partners. There were no co-founders. It was just me. But if you knew that you were buying from some guy in his bedroom, you would not feel good about that. You would not want to order parts from there. But realize that I'm shipping out little brown boxes, just like Amazon, just like anybody else. So as long as that little brown box gets to your doorstep, you don't really care. But you need to feel comfort in the business that you're transacting with. So early on, we made ourselves sound very big. We made ourselves sound like we were a legitimate business with a phone number. It was just me in my bedroom, and the phone would the phone would ring. And I would answer it, and it would be a customer, and the customer would say, hey, Sparkfun, you sent me 2 of this, but I ordered 3. And I said, oh, I'm really sorry. I'll go down to shipping, and I'll go get that fixed. And then I'll go talk to customer service and make sure that this never happens again. When really, it's just me sitting in my bedroom fixing the order that I had just screwed up. But it goes to show, like, as long as the user has a good experience and they get what they ordered, they are not defrauded, then it helps everybody feel better about the transaction. So for a long time, we were just one. And then after a couple of years, we got multiple employees. And now we are about 110 employees strong. if you're thinking about starting your own business, or if you're thinking about going into some sort of venture, realize that no one prepares you for the pitfalls. Every day is a different one. It's pretty exciting. I enjoy it until you get letters from the Department of Homeland Security advising you that you have some stuff at the port that is going to be destroyed. So in, I think, what year is this? 2014. I got to learn about trademark law. What you see up top is Fluke's trademark on handheld multimeters. So for those that don't know, Fluke is a company, it's a multi-billion-dollar company that makes handheld instrumentation, most often known as the digital multimeter. And anybody who has a Fluke, you know, they swear by it. And it's a $200 multimeter that I personally could not afford. I still don't have one today. Down below here is the Sparkfun Multimeter. It is $15, right? It's yellow. And so what happened, and we had been selling these for years, probably 6 or 8 years at this point. We were importing 4,000 multimeters through the port of LA. Fluke did not like this, and so they put an injunction in place and had all 4,000 multimeters destroyed. So that is the day that you just poof, gone. So that's like $35,000, $40,000 plus shipping that I got to lose. What I learned about is that trademark loss. So somehow Fluke got a trademark on the color yellow. Any handheld instrument that is the color yellow, they can block at the port. And they have lots of attorneys and lots of folks that know how to do this. So as a small business owner, you get launched into, you're supposed to kind of know these things, but you don't know it. I never took that class. So I like to share the graphic, like you graduate college knowing the green slice, right? And you know some stuff, the blue slice, you know some stuff you don't know. I don't know about accounting, okay? So I'm gonna go hire somebody to help me with accounting. That's stuff I don't know. But what really bites and what really burns is the stuff you don't know, okay? And this was just one of those painful lessons along the way. So I don't mean to scare you away from starting your own business, but just know that you read a lot of these amazing stories of rocket trajectories, and it seems like nothing ever went wrong. Stuff goes wrong all the time. No one just openly talks about it. So if you want to read more, all of this stuff, we're very public about it. And it was a painful couple weeks. So fast forward 17 years, started in 2002, 2003. It's now 2020. And I, 3 or 4 years ago, I started to get very grumpy because all of my days were filled with meetings and phone calls and issues and people coming to me with, there's this problem and this problem. Well, realize that I started the company building stuff. I really enjoyed designing circuits and tinkering and learning about new technologies. And so I was going pretty insane. And so against many, many smart people's recommendation, we hired a CEO. So this is Glenn Samala. He's our CEO. He's been our CEO for 4 years now. He and I get along amazingly. Once a week, we sit down and we chat about all the things. Glenn is business through and through. He loves financials. He loves talking to bankers. He loves getting people pointed in the right direction. He loves thinking about the future and vision and all this stuff. I would love to tell you about my GPS project. I would love to tell you about the circuit I designed. And so my point here is, do what you do best. You're going to find a position in a company, and it might be a hard job, it might be a great job, but don't force it, right? If I was not the right person to lead my company, my job was to go find somebody who was the right person to lead my company. I am best at new product design and coming up with weird ideas and just trying silly stuff. And for the past 4 years, he has been much less stressed from his previous job, which was at a big multi-billion-dollar company. And I am much less stressed because I am not sort of doing the HR CEO vision thing. You got to do what you do best. This is the org chart at Sparkfun. If it looks complicated, it kind of is. My point on this is that I don't appear anywhere on here. It's wonderful. I don't have direct reports. I don't have a department. I don't have anything going on. Because of this, this has enabled me to start something called SparkX. So it's just a thing inside Sparkfun. It's Nate's little corner where Nate does weird stuff. I have, let's see, an engineer named Priyanka. She's on the call today. We have Jesse, who helps us with logistics. We have Paul in the UK, who's an engineer, and Nick, who's an engineer out of Virginia. So it's a ragtag group of about 5 people, and all we do is come up with weird products and throw them at the wall, and sometimes they stick and sometimes they don't, but it's been a tremendous amount of fun to come up with stuff fast. So this is Nick. This is one of his projects, the Internet Connected Flamethrower, because why not? When you've got a Wi-Fi module, let's hook it up to some propane and see what happens. This was a SparkX endeavor 2 years ago. My wife bought me a safe off of Craigslist, and that safe was $20 because that safe did not have a combination. Who wants to buy a safe without a combination? My wife knows me so well, she knew I wanted that safe. And so what do you do with a safe that doesn't have a combination? You got to create a robot to try to open up the safe. So that's what we did. My group designed this robot. You can find it. There's a tutorial describing all the vulnerabilities that we found with SentrySafe. We then took that to DEF CON and cracked a safe in front of 800 people. It took us about 33 minutes. It was probably the worst idea I've ever had. Live demos are a terrible idea, especially at DEF CON. Thankfully and luckily, we were successful. So this robot magnetically adheres to the front. You press the start button and it starts turning the dial and pulling on the handle and doing all the things. I then gave my presentation at DEF CON. It lasted about 32.5 minutes, 33 minutes. It was terrifying because I had gotten to my last slide and the robot still wasn't open. The safe still wasn't open. And then right as I was kind of completing my talk, you hear this do-do-do, and the safe was open. It was awesome. So weird projects. Is this a product? No, absolutely not. But it's just a fun sort of project demonstrating what you can do with technology, and then starts kind of conversations about security. Fun project. We had a beehive at Sparkfun. And so we took a bathroom scale, we hacked it, we hooked it up to Wi-Fi, and then you can monitor the weight of the beehive over time. This I found particularly interesting. Some of these are the temperature, black line is temperature, humidity. So this is the inside of the hive itself, and then the blue line is the weight. So 147 pounds. A fun thing to note is that it drops, what is this, is that 10 pounds? The hive drops 8% of its weight at sunrise. So every morning, all the bees leave. And so then they slowly come back during the day, and then they come back at night, all to do it over again. And so what you think is this really simple biological process of, yeah, of course the hive gets heavier, it gets bigger, there's more honey, there's more bees, what's the problem? It's actually this crazy sawtooth that has a trend line, but it's fun to hook sensors to biological processes to allow you to dig into them and understand them a bit better. This is my beautiful wife inside our overvoltaged Power Wheels. This is a ton of fun. We built this for an autonomous vehicle competition. She ended up winning the whole thing. My portion of it failed spectacularly. This thing has, I don't know, it's like 10 or 12 microcontrollers in it. The idea is that she was driving in the human driving race and did great. I raced in the autonomous one where the Batmobile is supposed to drive itself. So you use a series of distance sensors and GPS and different stuff to try to navigate around the course. My car immediately drove into a hay bale. So it was a good time. But this car is capable of doing about 18 miles an hour, which is a tremendous amount of fun when you're 3 inches off the ground. So yeah, highly recommend it. Wildly uncomfortable, but a lot of fun. So let's see, William asked me to talk briefly about where we're headed. And I took that as sort of the local and micro and macro. Micro at Sparkfun, where Sparkfun is headed, we launched this yesterday. This is what's called Micromod. It's fun. The concept is you have different carrier boards and you have different processor boards. That way you can swap them. So if you have a display board and you need to add Wi-Fi, then you simply pull out the processor board and put in a new processor board that has Wi-Fi. Or if you want to deal with machine learning, you can swap your processor board to a different carrier board so that you then enable that interaction. So we're pretty excited. it's really fun to be able to write code, and I'm purely Arduino. So we write all the code in Arduino, and then it cross compiles between, Ambic Apollo 3, ESP32, SAMD21, Teensy. We've got a tremendous number of really powerful different processors enabled, and anyways, allows us to sort of point at different targets and do different things. On the left is this is the machine learning board. This has got a couple microphones, an accelerometer, and a camera connector, so you can do image recognition. The most popular one is currently is there a human in the frame or not? Turns out it's TensorFlow and Google have a really good data set and can, with a very high confidence level, detect if there's a human in the frame or not. What that's useful for is package delivery, and whether someone is attending is in the room at the hospital. There's lots of different applications. Microphones are the classic Amazon Echo, is the user saying yes or no, on, off, raise the windows, that sort of a thing. And then the accelerometer, that gets into really some fun stuff. Gesture recognition. Am I waving my hand? Am I doing this? Am I doing that? Sure. But also like the ability to detect whether or not a person is getting arthritic, or if the surgery took, or I can look at the gait of a human and see if something is going wrong. People can detect if your shoes are wearing out, depending on how you're stepping. So kind of fun, it's fun times with TensorFlow and machine learning. Some other projects. I am a GPS nerd through and through. We have some high precision GPS receivers at Sparkfun that are capable. You can see the horizontal accuracy on this is 14 millimeters. So that's approximately the width of my pinky nail. So using GPS, using an antenna with a plate, and that red thing is the GPS receiver hooked up to my cell phone, I can get XYZ accuracy to 2 centimeters anywhere on the globe. It's crazy. What can you do with that? Obvious ones are surveying and farming and all sorts of stuff, but the implications are pretty big. The big breakthrough, this high precision GPS has been around for a decade or two. The difference is the cost. So what used to be tens of thousands of dollars is now hundreds. So for $200, you can get high precision GPS. So I've been having a ton of fun with that. This picture is down on Pearl Street. This is the Buffalo down on Pearl Street. Another one of my projects, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but the ability to quickly prototype is a key thing at Sparkfun. So if you're not into electrical engineering, you don't really know kind of what's going on, there's all these development boards, and you have this board and this processor, and I got to hook up this sensor. There's a lot of soldering and wires and areas where it can go wrong. So at Sparkfun, what we realized is that we could do sort of this cable plug-in system. For the hardened engineers in the room, this is all I2C. So it's a bus that's, you can add drops to the bus and it all talks. And this particular thing, this is a data logger. These are all digital scales. So you can hook up bathroom scales, or you can hook up gram scales, medical scales, whatever you want. And these sensors will read those load cells, read the scales, and then data log it back onto this. The point of this picture is we wrote some code that auto detects what's hooked up to the bus. So now, without having to write any code, you can plug stuff in and it automatically sees, oh, you've got a distance sensor and a GPS module and a scale. I don't know what you're doing with that, but I'm going to go ahead and give you the data output so that you can do something interesting with it. An application of this, I was talking to a friend who worked at a bar, and the way that they inventory the alcohol is with thirds. So it's like every day or a couple times a week, they look at each single bottle and they say, is this a third full, 2/3 full, or is it full? And that is the level of precision they've got. But if you've got a digital scale and some RFID, you dunk, dunk, you can inventory that incredibly quickly, and you can monitor your inventory, right? It's an I have inventory issues, so do bars. So we are not building end consumer products. This can't be a bar inventory system, but it are the bits and pieces to enable folks to build the prototype they need for proof of concept. That's my recent sort of projects I'm pretty excited about, but it leads to sort of that macro where we headed. And macro, there's a conference that has been going on for a couple decades, 10 or 15 years, called Sketching in Hardware. The idea being that, we sketch on pencil and paper and that's easy. How do we sketch with hardware? It's really still kind of hard, but you can see that Sparkfun is headed in this direction where instead of forcing users to solder or, oh my god, like I am an Arduino user. I really like this language. It makes it easy for me to program. But you know, writing code is still difficult for a lot of folks, including myself. What are the tools that we can build so that code gets easier? You know, back in the day it was assembly, and then there was compilers, and now we have sort of these, what are they called? SDKs, software development kits. There's many, many layers that have improved the human sort of ability to create electronics. I think that's only going to continue and get easier in the future. So the tools that we're going to see over the next 10 or 20 years are going to make it even easier to sketch something, to come up with a product or a thing that I really enjoy without having to know C or C++ or how to get a bootloader working like that. That is not for the faint of heart. So yeah, I think that's kind of where we're headed. And that's all I've got for today. So I wanted to know what kind of questions you guys have got.
First thing, Nate, thank you so much. That was
Sure.
great.
Yeah.
You're a great presenter. You have a unique energy. Okay, I'm going to be quiet and let other people ask some questions because I only understood every third word and I was still amused and informed. So, other people, take it away. Come on now, be bold.
All right, I'll talk. Well, first I want to say, Nathan, thank you very much for your business. It has been a great enabler in my education and even in my professional career. Lots of hardware prototypes basically came out of browsing your website. I found a lot of the blog posts that you guys have done over the years very interesting. And I remember there was one a while ago that you had with some counterfeit chips getting into your products. And I'm curious since then, if you had any other similar issues, and also how do you deal with, say, people counterfeiting your own products?
Oh, so many good questions in there. So first of all, I'll talk about what Louise is referencing is there was a shortage of this one chip called the ATmega 328. It went on every Arduino in the world, and we couldn't get them. And so I jumped on a website that was a bit dodgy, and I started to have a conversation with an individual that claimed that they could get me the chips. And I was like, this doesn't seem legit, but we're going to try anyways. And so we ended up getting 2,000 of the chips at, I think it was $1 or $2 a piece. So it was $3,000 worth of counterfeit chips. We got them in, we soldered them to a board, it didn't work. We then proceeded to blog post about it, where we had customers who were x-raying the chips. We had customers who were using fuming sulfuric acid to remove the top of it, and then using microscopes to view what the chip actually was. So it was a really fun forensics experiment. So in my 17 years, we have sent wire payments in the tens of millions all over the globe, and that was the only time we've been burned.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
We went into it knowing that it was like a little dodgy, a little sketchy. We're going to try this anyways. Maybe it'll work out, but probably. And so yeah, it's fine. You're kind of, and forgive me if I'm interpreting, your second question was, how do we prevent people from counterfeiting our products?
Yeah.
So I have a whole talk on open source hardware. What I love is all of our products are open source. So we say, hey, here's the design files, here's the schematic, here's the Gerbers, here's everything you need to make this yourself. Go for it. And so when people when I don't consider them counterfeits, I consider them copies or derivatives. It was so much fun. My wife and I went to China, and we're walking around the electronics market in Shenzhen, and I have this, we're just looking at all the display cases, and sure enough, there's this little purple disc of a PCB, and that is the LilyPad. That is a product that we came up with years ago, and there it is in the case. And I asked, I don't know Mandarin, but we managed to pantomime enough to get it out. The board was too thick. It was obvious that we didn't make it because all of ours are in half thickness PCB. This was a normal thickness PCB. They got the purple right, but they got the thickness wrong. So I was like, wow, this is amazing. I cannot tell you how great it feels to come up with something that had such an impact in this world that someone wanted to copy it. You know you're doing something right if someone copies it. So yeah, I could go on and on. Patents cost $30,000 to $50,000 and 3 to 5 years to get. Okay, so file the paperwork now, and you might get a decision in 3 to 5 years. Does anyone know what their cell phone looked like 3 years ago? Right? Like, technology is changing pretty quick. So you go ahead and go get your patent. I'm just going to open source all my stuff and come up with the next cool thing next month. So it's what it does is it causes us to operate without a false safety net. I say a false safety net because patents, like, you have a monopoly for 17 years, but that means you've got to go sue the pants off of whoever is in copying your thing. I don't have that worry. That thought never comes into my head. I have to be thinking about what the next product is that I'm coming up with. So hopefully that answers your question, Louise. Please let me know if I didn't answer it.
Oh, no, that answered my question very well. And actually, I've relied a lot on your guides and the diagrams that you put up. I say you, when I say you, I mean your team and you, of course.
Totally.
Just in everything that I've learned from it, it's been great.
Yep. Thanks. Thank you very much.
More people, more thoughts, more questions.
Just wanted to contribute here with Nathan that we had an issue. I'm an engineer in charge for our traffic lights here where I live, right? And some of the traffic lights were just far away and they were out of sync. And we have a Sparkfun GPS getting time from a satellite and spreading all the time into 4 controllers using RS485 cable. So Sparkfun is providing data and time for the traffic controllers. It's just great, man. It's just amazing, you know. It works like a charm.
That's so cool. That makes me so happy. But yeah.
So it was very naive. I mean, indigenous, I could say, approach, but that's the only one we had. Otherwise, we would need to bring fiber into the traffic controllers. And I thought, you know what? What are the odds that the GPS clock would drift? If our central SCUD server is getting data, data information from local time information from the satellite. Yeah. So that's the very same from afar. So, well, those traffic lights are just like 5 or 7 miles away from the last endpoint of the SCUD network. So I think that's pretty cool, and they're running in sync. So we don't need to go there and adjust clock and stuff. You know, all the four traffic controllers are running with the green wave. That's what we need.
That's perfect. Yeah, GPS is accurate to whatever it is, 20 nanoseconds. And so, yeah, if you've got a bunch of receivers all like pulling down satellite information, you need to see 1 or 2, and you've got a time lock, and you can synchronize your traffic lights. That's really neat.
Yeah. And we just want to thank you for everything you brought us to us, because your products are amazing. And the GPS was just, I think it was, I don't remember now. It has just like it was not Venus or something name, but it was just a great piece of hardware. Thank you.
Good. I'm glad it's working well for you. Yeah. GPS is just fun to, pull down to talk to satellites that are 10 kilometers away, and the amount of engineering that goes into making the constellations work. Was it GPS, Galileo, Baidu in China, and Galileo in European?
GLONASS.
GLONASS, thank you, GLONASS in Russia. To make all that stuff work, and the relativistic physics for the time delay and dilation and all. Yeah, it's really neat whenever it comes together.
Yeah, thank you.
So I have a question. I'm gonna jump in here.
Please.
At some point in that little bedroom, you were faced with a real issue, which is, am I an online retailer or am I an engineer? And I think that's a happy question to be faced with, because you could make a living as an online retailer. How did you resolve that in your head and continue, and not just say, okay, I'm going to just keep mailing things and selling them and, buy a new car and have more and start a family? How did you keep to the notion that you're an engineer first?
Good question. I think the early on, there was a mantra, and I think we still stick by it, is if we're not the best at it, we find the person who is and sell theirs. So for example, I don't make USB cables, right? There's people out there that are really good at making USB cables. There's people that are better at me than making chip programmers. There's people better at me than doing all sorts of stuff. And so I will absolutely resell their product. But then there's, some of the first products we did was an accelerometer breakout board. So you couldn't get the chip, and if you wanted to play with the chip, you had to buy an evaluation board that'll cost you $400. Right? And it was this terrible thing. And so I was like, wow, I can do a breakout board and I can solder a chip to it and I can sell it for 35. And so, you find where you can add value and then you resell the stuff where you can't. And early on, that making those connections is really important. What I mean is the programmer, we would sell a board and that board needed power. Well, other retailers would just post the board. It was up to you to figure out the power supply. Well, we said, wait a second, we should stock the power supply that works so that if people want to add it to their cart, they can buy it at the same time. It sounds ridiculously obvious and simple in today's e-commerce terms, but back then nobody did that. So we would sell the cable that went with the board. We would sell the power supply. We would sell the chips. We would sell all the stuff that sort of made it so that you had not quite a one-stop shop, but a better overall experience. And so, yeah, to this day, I sort of look at, should I build it in my building? Because we have a manufacturing line there. We can solder pretty much anything, or do we go get it? And there's been a lot of cases where we have to say, you know what, let's go get it, or, and focus on the places where we can add value.
Other people, other questions?
I have a question that sort of goes off of Luis's question. You sort of talked about open hardware and how you're okay with people sort of replicating, I want to say is a nice word, your board.
Yeah.
How do you sort of like relate that to like recouping your R&D costs? And, you guys have like personnel to pay and teach, who write tutorials and, software interface, to interface with the boards. Like if somebody tomorrow, like let's say if the actual PCB, prototyping person, decides to sort of sell your board for cheaper, how will that work from a business perspective?
So today, if you go onto Amazon and type, BME 680, BMP 285, like there's all of these sensor boards that are our design from years ago that are now being mass produced and sold on Amazon. And that's fine, right? Like if I can't be the cheapest on Amazon, then I have to give it to somebody else. So your question of how do we pay for R&D, it comes down to the classic sort of business question of, do you have customer service? Do you answer the phone? How fast can you ship the product? These are not open and closed sourced sorts of questions. This is me and Cisco, right? We have exactly the same problems. They're business problems. It doesn't have to do with open or closed source. Regardless of whether you're open or closed or good or bad, if you create a product that is selling well, it will be copied. And so then it's up to you to find other methods to continue to generate revenue. The reason why customers come to Sparkfun instead of Amazon is we're a little higher up the food chain. So let me digress for just a moment. I had a friend a number of years ago, and he was terrified. He was like, Nathan, you're going to lose your business because of this thing called AliExpress. And I said, okay, AliExpress, for those that don't know, is this Chinese marketplace where you can buy anything and everything is really cheap and there's free shipping. And so he's like, Nathan, I can get jumper cable, little wires to stick in my breadboard. I can get trim pots. I can get cables. I can get all this stuff for way cheaper on AliExpress than I can from Sparkfun. You're going to die. And I said, well, I don't know about that. So here we are 5 or 10 years later and bigger than ever. And I think, there are students, and I was there, where you don't have 2 dimes to rub together. That's go buy from AliExpress. but I think, William, maybe you can comment on this. As I get a little older in my life, I am not buying tools from Harbor Freight. I am buying nice tools. So, you know, that I am not the Harbor Freight customer. So you have to find, I'm dancing around the subject, but you see where I'm going. My customers are folks that have less time and more money, and they need support. They need the ability to get the thing shipped FedEx 2-day, and they need it delivered to their door, and they need it guaranteed that it's going to work, and they need to be able to get 10 of them now because it just blew up and the stoplights are out in Brazil, right? Like, it's got to work. So yeah, there's a time and a place for every product, and yeah, I hope that answers your question without being too preachy.
No, it does. It does. Maybe I have a second question. I
Please.
hope I'm not being too focused on this topic, but so I think what you said makes sense in terms of like breakout boards and customers who need support and, you know, need guidance. So what about more complex products? Let's say you make, like, let's say there's an iPhone, and, you know, you have iPhone counterfeit, you know, products out there. And there, you know, the customer may be fine waiting for longer because, you know, just the difference in price is so high. And the real value add there is actually the software and not the hardware. So they can actually use, you know, Apple software, but on a different hardware. So there's a, you know, there's just not the R&D cost of the hardware to be recouped, but also the R&D cost of software, which might be higher, to be honest.
So there's some interesting research and some apocryphal stories. I'll tell you the stories. I don't know if they're true or not, but the research is pretty legitimate. So Gucci handbags. I don't have a Gucci handbag, but very quietly, Gucci stopped blocking counterfeit imports. And and all these economists sort of were scratching their heads like, why, what are you doing? Turns out, the very high brand names get greater value from counterfeits. So by distributing counterfeits, you get brand recognition. More and more people see Gucci bags, and suddenly people that can't quite afford them but really want one get one, and they get that pleasure, and maybe someday they'll be able to afford one. But what's worse than being counterfeited is nobody knowing who you are. And so by allowing the counterfeits into various countries, Gucci actually made more money. There have been studies that show that by having counterfeits in a marketplace, certain brands and certain products benefit from it. I would say, you use the example of an iPhone. It's incredible the innovation that comes in China with the $100 Shenzai, I don't pronounce it correctly, very innovative, very cheap phones. And so yes, Apple, I'm sure it gives them heartburn, but no one is going to confuse a $100 phone for a $600 iPhone. So it's a business decision that Apple has to make whether or not it's worth their time to sort of go up against those challenges. It's whack-a-mole. So does that answer your question?
It does a little bit. Coming back to the Gucci thing, I've heard of that story where, you know, like counterfeits, you know, eventually the counterfeiter purchasers, you know, become advertisers in a sense. But, you know, there's also, I forget what the department is called, but there's the receiving side on the customs, Department of Customs in the US that actually watches out for this. And, you know, I think they're actually receiving a ton of you know, counterfeit Apple products and all these products, and even I'm sure they also catch Gucci bags and stuff like that. So it has been a problem. I think I see your perspective of, hey, you know, it's not as maybe not as some came there, but yeah. So thank you for answering that. Yeah.
Sure.
So we've been at it an hour now, and I want to be respectful of Nate's time. Do we have one more question from the group?
Are you hiring summer interns at Sparkfun?
Good question. Please apply. We do have an internship program. Currently, it's a little thin because of COVID. So please apply. Yes, we would love to see what you've got. A few things that we're looking for are, you know, show us what you've built. show us what you've got, used your hands on. We get a lot of applicants that say, hey, worked as a group and here's my capstone project, and we dig in and there's not a lot of technical detail that they know. So be sure that you can demonstrate that you've done something. And then the other one is, I really enjoy students who have sort of that base knowledge of whatever, but the best interns turned employees are those folks that had sort of a side interest where they had to go learn something completely different. Example, we were interviewing an aerospace engineer. They graduated with an aerospace degree, but they went down this rabbit trail of microcontrollers. And so they showed us that they were capable of learning something very much outside their core. So when you graduate college and you have your master's degree in electrical engineering, that's great. I'm sure you'll be completely prepared for the marketplace. No, that's not true. You need to be able to learn new things. And so in your interview, whether it's at Sparkfun or somewhere else, consider demonstrating the new weird thing that you learned. That shows competency and the ability to pick up new stuff.
That sense of ongoing learning, I think, has been iterated in each one of these conversations, where really a key to some kind of success is an ongoing sense of growth and of engagement. And what I'm taking, Nate, this was a brilliant, brilliant discussion. I'm kind of amped up right now with your energy, and I just found it intoxicating. I loved that Fluke voltmeter example you gave, because it seems not just to be an interesting part of your narrative, but really a foil for what you've become, because they're protecting their product through yellow, right? And they're actively trying to really end any competition in order to protect that without growing. And your whole ethos seems to be to recognize that capitalism has a ruthless edge. And you've said at least 3 times in this conversation that there's a real equation between time and money.
Yeah.
And that seems to me that, it's a capitalist economy. And yet you put into that this sense of adventurousness. It seems that everything you've said has been a spirited nature of willing to take some kind of intellectual engineering adventurous risk and let that drive you into the future, and not just hang on to yellow as some kind of club to beat people with. So I really want to underscore that these are dire times. They're in many ways frightening and desperate feeling. And yet if we give up that sense of adventurousness, we're really undercutting any chance we have of controlling our own destiny. And if your story tells us anything, it's that you did control your own destiny, by buying some tape and dumpster diving the boxes. You were able to build your own destiny. And it's wonderful that the people on this call are fans.
A little bit of luck and a lot of work. Yeah. Few things imparting. I just want to point out that Professor Erickson taught me circuits many, many years ago. And so I'm very, very appreciative of the staff at CU, and just saw that you joined. Thank you. Many years ago, that got me through circuits it was a good time. And then, it's everything with COVID, and the analogy that I used to use, and it's now very poignant today. What's happening is and I don't want to short it, but it's kind of like a terrible forest fire. COVID and the entire situation, economy and everything else, it is disproportionate and it's terrible. There's a terrible forest fire going on across the world, metaphorically and now physically in our own backyard. But what happens after a forest fire? There are plants and there are things that never get the chance to grow because the forest is there. And biologically speaking, there are a tremendous number of things that happen, really good things that happen after a forest fire. And so while it's really bad right now, and we're struggling to get up in the morning, I'm kind of bullish and I'm kind of excited, because this is an opportunity to try. There's going to be a tremendous number of entrepreneurs and ideas and wacky stuff that come out of COVID and the honest to God forest fires in our own backyard. Just do what you can, because I think the future is pretty bright. I think there's opportunities out there.
On that note, That is so optimistic and positive, and said from you, it's believable. So thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
I really mean it. I may have to steal that from my class on Monday and let them have it. So
Please feel free. It's
yeah,
open source.
it's your open source resource. Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining. We will post this video. I think it's worth rewatching, and onwards.